Hello, it's Dave March, and welcome to Land of Confusion, the show for members by members where we interview other members. And this is my co-host, Don.
Hi, Don Tillman here, Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
It's later than usual here, so it's dark.
Mm-hmm. And today we're talking to Randy Weivoda.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Randy.
So Randy does not have a webcam. That's why we're having it. We'll be using the image that you're going to see when I get around to doing this in post, as I say.
We can't even use a sock puppet. It's terrible.
Yeah, I could actually get a picture of the sock puppet and put it over him. I know you, Randy. We've been trying to do this for a number of weeks now, and today we're doing it on a Sunday night, unlike our usual Thursdays, because that's when you have the only free time you have right now. On the other, and thanks for sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And it also kind of works out because I believe you guys have your Thanksgiving at an odd time, normally the time we would record this. So I think it works out best for us that we do an off-schedule episode like this.
Well, thanks for accommodating me.
Yeah. And also it's our 30th episode. So there you go.
Cool.
Okay. So Randy, where did you grow up and what was it like there?
Yeah, introduce yourself to us all.
Well, I've lived in Minnesota my whole life. I guess when I was little, you could say central Minnesota, but for most of my life, I've lived in northwestern Minnesota, pretty close to the North Dakota border.
And we can hear the accent. And it's great.
So let's see. I've been married for 15 years. I've got no kids. I work at a grocery distribution warehouse currently. I was hired on at the beginning of summer as a forklift operator, and then about a month ago I got transferred to a different position, so I'm a produce inspector now.
And what did you do before that?
I've spent most of my life working in my family's small business, which is a retail carpet store. So since the 6th grade, I've been working there. But a few years ago, my folks said that they want to retire, and so they want to sell the whole place off and everything. And like a million other small businesses, there's no profit in it. Basically, you work like a dog just to keep the doors open and break even. So I figured rather than waiting until the business is closed and then trying to find a job, I'd go find something. So a couple of years ago, I took a job at a company that sells used and new helicopter parts.
Ooh.
And worked there for 21 months and finally figured that if they haven't given me a raise by now, I'll never get one, because they kind of figure warehouse people, which is where I worked, are a dime a dozen. There's no point paying somebody enough that they want to stay. So they took this job at the grocery distribution warehouse. And the pay is quite a bit better, but it is working a night shift, which is why I couldn't do this necessarily when you guys normally record your shows.
Yep. Yeah, I worked in a grocery warehouse for 18 years. Started off as a temp in 2000, and I worked my way up to being what was called a transportation coordinator, where I was at for like 12 years. And then they moved my warehouse job to a very far away place from where I lived. And then I got a job working for Toyota for 2 years. So.
Well, you guys got to trade grocery warehouse stories.
Yeah, we could. Have you seen a pallet of cherries get knocked over yet?
Oh, stuff gets knocked over quite a bit.
Oh, those wonderful YouTube videos of like the whole warehouse. Somebody ramming into a shelf, and it triggers a whole domino effect of shelves falling down.
Fortunately, I never saw anything like that.
Right.
But I was there one day. We were all upstairs, and suddenly we hear the goddamnest sound oh, sorry, I shouldn't swear like that. But I heard this humongous sound, and we're like, what is that? Turns out someone had not put the chocks on a truck, and someone drove a forklift, and the truck slid, and the forklift went down like this. That was something to see.
Yeah, it seems like most of the spillage happens coming off the truck because the load gets shifted and it's, you know, kind of leaning to one side. And the guy who's unloading it maybe doesn't feel like going in there and restacking everything. So he takes his chances and it spills all over the place. And then there's a lot of cursing.
You mean shifted in transit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, they open the trailer doors and you can see this thing is like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And, you know, a more prudent thing to do would be to come in there with a fresh pallet and restack everything. But like I said, some people want to just take their chances and then get angry when it falls all apart.
David, put this on this list of diverse topics we cover.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, hey, I remember like growing up with my family, and everyone was a roofer at one time or another. And one time I went to a party at my brother's house, and there was another guy there who was from the warehouse business. He was in like another company's frozen food department, and it was like, oh my God, there's someone that can actually swap work stories at one of these things that's not a roofer. But yeah, so you worked in your family.
Well, let's go into a little more. So what's tell us. I'm unfamiliar with how grocery warehouses work actually. Can you tell us, break it down a little bit?
So where we work, the shift that I'm on, which I come in at 11, but other people on the receiving crew come in at 10 p.m. And that shift is when we process the incoming produce and other groceries at the other warehouse. In Fargo, there's the main warehouse, and then the produce warehouse, which is a few blocks away. So the other shifts then process all the outgoing stuff. So they've got orders from dozens of grocery stores, and guys are running up and down the aisles with these electric pallet jacks. Basically, it's like they've got a shopping list. Somebody's talking to them over a wireless headset, telling them, go to this location, I need 3 of these, go to that location, I need 5 of those, whatever, and filling up the orders. And then they load up the trucks that are going out. And then we come in again to process the incoming groceries.
Now, is there a time when most deliveries are made to grocery stores, the final store?
I assume it must be during the daytime. That, of course, I don't know. I guess it depends on where the store is, because we're supplying stuff to stores that are hundreds of miles away even.
Right. I can tell you when the store wants it, Don. It's 7 a.m. We all want our. I don't care how many trucks in the network there are. I don't care how many other stores there are. I want my truck at 7 a.m. sharp.
do they do that? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I was in the transportation side of things. It doesn't sound like Randy did do something different than the places I worked at. I worked actually at both of the big grocery chains. The second one, I only worked there like 6 months because the grass was always greener, for what I could tell. But yeah, so basically, where I was, the receiving shift was the morning shift. Afternoon shift was kind of the put away and pick shift, and then night shift we would send stuff out, and you'd have all these deliveries you'd deliver throughout the day. The optimum for the warehouse side of things is to have it 24/7, so you can have the trucks turn around faster and go out more times in the day, or just less trucks needed when you'd go deliver throughout the day versus all delivering at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I wonder if there's any time when grocery stores are not accepting deliveries, or is it pretty much around the clock?
It depends on bylaw a lot. So we couldn't deliver to in Ontario to North Bay between after 10 o'clock at night or before 6 a.m. Right.
Okay. I see.
And I can tell you the trucks don't always show up on schedule, the incoming
sure.
trucks to the warehouse. And some truck drivers will actually call and say, hey, I'm going to be 2 hours late or whatever. And some, they might be 8 hours late and there's no phone call. So you have no idea when something is coming.
And I would guess the truckers would do what they can to avoid rush hour traffic, right?
I don't know. There's really not much rush hour in Fargo, North Dakota.
All right.
There definitely was a lot of rush hour in Ontario.
There's some, but not much. But they may be traveling through bigger cities on their way here.
Excellent.
Yeah, a lot of things move by truck that we don't realize is going that way. And a few years back in when I was working at Penske, which was the subcontractor for Toyota, we were desperate for drivers because that's when they changed the national laws in the United States to being you can only drive for 10 hours from like 13. And suddenly that meant 25% of the fleet went away because those are drive time hours. And then, so suddenly you needed 20 to 25% more drivers for everything. And I still believe that's a shortage right now. And
so what's happening in Minnesota right now? What does our man on the ground say? What's your view? What's your vantage point there?
Oh, I mean, we've got probably the same sort of COVID restrictions that a whole lot of other states have. Just maybe a week ago, our governor once again closed restaurants for indoor dining, so back to takeout only. We had that for maybe a couple of months in the late spring and early summer. Let's see.
Now you're not near a big city, right? You're in a small town.
The town I live in has 3,000 people, and
that's small.
The city right next to us is about 30-some thousand, and then on the other side of that city is Fargo, North Dakota, and I don't know if that's like about 100,000. So Fargo is the biggest city in North Dakota.
Wow.
Or, so, I mean, some people would say that's not even really a city; it's just a big town. So it depends
it's where
you
James
draw the
Lilacs
line.
is from, right?
That's right. Yep, and I actually got to meet him. The very first meetup that I hosted was in Fargo, and there are very few Ricochet members around here, and were practically none at that time. But Whiskey Sam, who used to be a prominent Ricochet member several years ago, has a job where he travels around the country doing like computer contract work. And so he was coming to Fargo. So I figured, well, we ought to have a meetup then. And as luck would have it, James Lilacs was coming back to Fargo that weekend for something to do with his family, like a niece or nephew was graduating from high school or something. So got to do that. And we even had Hank Rohde and Matt Balzer come all the way up from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is 5 hours away. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, 5 hours away, I don't think it's a big of a drive for a meetup if you want to do that kind of thing. But
that's a pretty long drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to spend a couple hours at a restaurant and then go home again.
But then you get to see all the wonders of Fargo.
Yep.
And the Lilacs Oil is still there, is that right? In Fargo?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. From time to time, I'll see one of those trucks out on the road.
Oh, great.
So you mentioned that were involved in the Republican Party as a director. In your county?
Yeah. So for many years, I'd always go to the precinct caucus. So that's the very starting point of getting involved.
Mhm.
So every 2 years you have a precinct caucus. And then in our county, at least, just about everybody who wants to go to the county convention can go. There might be a few precincts in Moorhead where there are more people who want to go than there are open slots. But for the most part, anybody who wants to go says yes. And you don't even have to vote on it.
Mhm.
So I'd go to the precinct caucus and the county convention. And then one year, the treasurer called me up on the phone and said that, hey, I know you usually come to these, and would you like to be the convener for Dilworth, which is the town I live in? And so I said, okay, went to the training session for that, and then went to the next couple of regular monthly meetings and just, started doing that pretty regularly. And then as people...
I'm just curious, what does a convener do?
Well, you're the person who runs the caucus for your precinct.
Okay.
So you've got this script from the state party, and what you're doing there is you're selecting people to be delegates to go to the county convention. And the convener asks people if they'd sign up to volunteer to do things like
being convener.
Put up yard signs and walk-in parades for Republican candidates and whatever, things that'll happen when you get closer to election time. And this is also where resolutions start. So, the Republican party in each state is going to have a state platform. And, excuse me.
No problem.
And so how the platform gets changed is at this precinct level, somebody will say, all right, I propose a resolution to add this to the platform or take that out or amend this, whatever. And then those people in that precinct vote that up or down. And if it's voted up, then it gets passed on to the resolutions committee at the county level. And then when you have the county convention, then people will vote on those things, and the things that pass get passed on to the next convention up the line, which is the congressional district convention. And things that pass there go to the state convention. And I've actually been the chair of our county's resolution committee for, can't remember if it's 2 or 3 times. 3 times now.
Okay.
So anyway, being that I'd come to these, the monthly meetings regularly when they had an opening on the board, then they'd asked if I wanted to be a director. And so I said, sure. So
what's the nature of I think you called them resolutions?
Yeah.
What's the nature of them? What are they like?
Well, so when we get at the county level, when I get all these resolutions from the precinct caucuses, a lot of them, even though they passed, won't actually be on the agenda at the county convention because a whole lot of them will be redundant. If somebody put up a resolution saying that the Minnesota GOP should be pro-life, okay, that's already in the platform. Mm-hmm. Or, we should support the Second Amendment. That's already in the platform. So a whole lot of stuff is already in there. So there's no point voting to not change it. I'm trying to think off the top of my head any examples of things that that we have passed.
Do you remember anything at all controversial? Or did that just not happen?
Yeah, sometimes, excuse me again.
Yeah, no problem.
I also served on the committee, the resolutions committee for the congressional district convention once. And there we got some screwball things where basically some counties would pass a resolution saying that the Minnesota Republican Party should be a Christian organization. Well, that's not something we want to do. We want this. You don't get votes by excluding people and telling them you don't belong here.
Right.
Good point.
So those were probably the most controversial things, the things that were outwardly religious.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I've been a provincial party president, and I'm the current federal party president. And I'm like, we don't have congressional districts. We have basically everything is a riding, and so the county doesn't get really elected anything. It's there, but there are still counties for various reasons. So. Yeah, I get it. I've been to the provincial convention. I've been to the federal convention. I've done all these things. I remember going to one provincial convention, and the most controversial thing that got voted on that day was which version of Robert's Rules of Order we would be governed by. And people were lined up, and finally, the guy who was running the resolution comes out. He's like, "We have a resolution. I think we can pass this. We will use the current rules, Robert's Rules of Order." So we wouldn't, because there were like people wanted Robert's Rules 4, 5, 6. Like, geez. Anyways.
Yeah, it's not unusual for people to have to debate on what those rules are, and so you'll always have a couple of people who pretty much have them memorized, who can be the authority on them.
Yep. So you mentioned that you're a big fan of science fiction. That's something that's been coming up a lot with some of our other guests. What's your favorite author?
I don't know if I could pick one, but among my favorites, Lois McMaster-Bujold. I just love her. I haven't really read much of her fantasy stuff, but her science fiction works, the Vorkosigan saga, I'm a big fan of. Jim Butcher, who also says that Lois McMaster-Bujold is his favorite author, at least when I saw him at SpikeCon a couple years ago. So he's got this Harry Dresden series.
Yes, that's what I was trying to
really
remember.
like. I used to read a lot of Joe Haldeman. Guess I haven't read anything of his lately. David Feintuck is not super well known, and he passed away a handful of years ago. But he had this, I don't know what the name of the saga is, but the first book in the series is called Midshipman's Hope.
Oh, yeah.
And you've read that?
I believe so.
Yeah, I loved that book.
I think that's the only one in the book series I read. I wanted to get into the rest of them, but I just only got through that one. Yeah,
I've read all of them. And I met him, well, the first time that I'd ever heard of him was at the World Science Fiction Convention, whatever year that it was hosted in Winnipeg. And there was somebody going around handing out paperback books, and asked, "Hey, do you want a free book?" And okay, I wasn't expecting much because, lots of times people are handing out free stuff. It's not particularly good.
Right.
But this was exceptionally good. And then at some later convention, I got to sit in a coffee clatch with David Feintuck. And a coffee clatch is something that they'll do at the World Science Fiction Convention, where a number of authors will sign up for this. And if you get down early enough, get your name on the list, you get to sit around a table with maybe 8 other fans and an author. And so I've done that a few times, and David Feintuck was one of them. I really like Connie Willis. I don't know if you've ever read
I don't think so.
the Doomsday Book. It's really good. And then the sequel to it, And the Doomsday Book is a very serious book.
There's a sequel to a Doomsday Book?
Yeah. Well, the plot of Doomsday Book is that time travel technology exists and is used by historians to go back and observe things in history. And so somebody is supposed to go back to not medieval Europe. I don't remember when exactly they're supposed to go back, but somebody sets something wrong in the machine and they get sent back to England during the plague.
Okay.
And so, yeah, from the perspective of the people living in those times, yeah, it was like doomsday. And so that's a very good and serious book. But then the one that comes after that is called To Say Nothing of the Dog. And that one is a lighthearted comedy. It has a few of the same characters. And it's just a total blast to read. It's a lot of fun. And she's written some historical fiction set in World War II. Can't remember the names of them right now. I think Blackout maybe is one of them.
Okay. But are they ones about like what if Hitler invaded England or something like that?
No, these aren't alternate histories. They're just fiction that, as I recall, is because it's been years since I've read them. It's like these historians from the future send some observers back just to not to necessarily see, what's happening with the top generals or whatever, but just to fill in some blanks in history. I'm trying to remember who else I've got for favorite authors. Oh, Robert Sawyer. He's written some really good stuff. One thing I like about him is he's got some real science in his science fiction books. Okay. So you always do get to learn something. It might be something related to astrophysics or biology or whatever.
Is it possible he wrote it that way? I mean, doing some research on some science, some little obscure bit of science, like astrophysics, and say, oh, I can write a plot around that. I mean, that could be a good writing tool.
It is what James P. Hogan used to do.
Yeah?
Yeah. He's
find something and build a plot around it. Like,
yeah, he's no longer with us, but he was an engineer and he wrote very hard, very realistic science fiction. And then he had some stranger periods amongst his collection.
There are some people like Arthur C. Clarke who like to get into the science in his stories, but he was not good at writing people. Basically, I want to talk about some technology and all right, I guess I've got to populate this story with some humans, but they were not well-written characters.
Well, that's interesting because something like Star Trek, it's all about the characters, right?
Yeah.
And any of the advanced technology is really a plot device, right? Just the transporter to just avoid having to get into a little ship to flip down to the planet. And then like a movie like Kubrick's 2001, there's like no characters. The characters are empty, blank.
Right.
And it's all about, the another dimensionality of everything. So, I think that's interesting. Different approaches you take to this.
Yeah, and like Lois McMaster-Bujold had mentioned before, she is great at writing characters. She'll have some science in her stories as well, but her characters are really three-dimensional. You really feel for the people in her stories.
Yeah,
I don't actually read science fiction books, so that's why my references are just like popular media.
Yeah, that's okay.
If I could mention one other author, and she also passed away several years ago, but Kage Baker, spelled Kage Baker, had this this set of stories. Sometimes they call them the company, where you've got stories set in different eras in time, where some people in the future figure out a way to do some limited time travel and basically send some scientists back to the deep past to create these cyborgs who will gather up things that have been lost to history that can later on be sold centuries down the line. You know, they're stuck in these warehouses so that the scientists who created this whole program can make themselves rich.
Like,
And
like the Library of Alexandria, they went and scanned all the books digitally and stored them somewhere, or all the lost books of like on like I Claudius's lost notes and all that stuff.
Yep, as well as things like extinct species of plants. Or,
sure, they got a whole host of dodos running around.
But
see, this proves this is irrefutable proof that time travel is not possible. If it was, we'd have the most amazing antique stores. Right?
Well, there's one
amazing antique stores.
There is one theory on time travel, and it is that you can't travel back further than the first time machine was invented. So you can only go back as far as when that is created. It's some sort of causality loop, I believe.
Right.
If you watch the movie Tenet, that's kind of what some of the plot is about.
There's another one where you can only go forward in time. So that keeps the loops out also. But go back only as far as the first time machine was invented. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's actually a James P. Hogan story, is that they make this machine. It's not that they can send notes back to themselves and they can't go further than the first time to get a note, but they start using this to send, like, there's like a plague coming down. So they send the notes on how to cure the plague down, or they send a note back saying, if you need to turn off this nuclear reactor or it's going to destroy the planet. So they're sending message back to fix themselves. And then, but each timeline changes. So in one timeline, these guys, this guy and a girl are a couple, and in another timeline, they're not. So it's interesting that way.
So David, do you ever go to science fiction conventions?
Sort of. I used to go to the ones like there's Toronto Comic Con kind of things, but I didn't like the Comic Con experience. It's just like, I'm not that big and interested in hearing actors talk about their show. I did go to, I've been like, they've combined with some book stuff. So I did go to, there used to be one here in Toronto. I went to a couple times. It's okay. I like gaming conventions, and sometimes gaming conventions will have science fiction writers and authors, and I'll talk to them there. So I used to go, this year I would have gone to Origins. I've always tried to go to Origins. That's in Columbus, Ohio. And of course, it kind of didn't happen this year. And Gen Con technically happened this year. And I did speak on a couple panels there for a group that I belong to called the National Security Decision Making Game. So I spoke a little bit about World War II and the fall of Berlin.
I try to go to a convention, maybe every 2 or 3 years. I'll see one that where the location is someplace I'd want to go, and they're going to have some guests that I want to see. And I've never been to a Comic-Con because, I'm not really interested in seeing actors. I'm more interested in meeting authors who come up with the ideas rather than just the people who act them out.
So do you guys go in costume?
I never have.
Not usually. Some games require costumes, and I'll wear for that. I have thought of getting a costume made up of an obscure science fiction TV show from the 80s called Star Cops, and going around dressed as a Canadian Star Cop, because it's a really simple uniform that goes for
Star Mountie.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's a British show. It's actually kind of got some hard. They tried to make a hard sci-fi future. It's written by some of the guys who wrote for Blake Seven and Doctor Who, and it was his like first TV show, and now they're doing audiobooks. You can find it all on YouTube. Some of the episodes are cornier, but there's like other episodes are actually pretty good, and I just love this dynamic of these British coppers in space trying to solve crimes of the future.
So I'm picturing a spacesuit version of a Mountie's uniform or something. That's just the image I get.
In the show, they got these blue, very simple overall dress, and with a badge on the side, and sometimes they're wearing ball caps. But it's just the nature of that particular TV show.
And although I don't have a costume, I do have a few pieces of science fiction jewelry that I'll wear at convention. So like the Earth Alliance pin from Babylon 5, I've got one of those. And the Rangers in Babylon 5, they had a pin. So I've got one of those.
I got a Shadows pin somewhere.
And I've got a pin from Battlestar Galactica.
The original or the new?
The newer one.
Okay.
I've got nothing.
Well, we can also talk a bit about one of your other subjects you mentioned in your bio. You big fan of country music.
Yep. Although right now we're kind of going through a dry spell, I think. It seems like we'll go through these surges and waves in country music radio where there's a lot of great stuff in the 70s and 80s. And then at some point, it's like the radio industry decided nobody wants to hear from these people who are over 50 years old. No matter how many hits they've had, that's yesterday. So somebody might have had, 30 or 40 hit records and their new record can't get any airplay. And you've got all these new artists, most of whom sound the same as one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes years and years for some good people to bubble to the top. And then you have another period of good country music on the radio. And then those people are apparently deemed to be too old. And so we're not going to play them anymore. And so right now it's like I could probably listen to an hour of top 40 country radio and not hear one song that I want to buy. And at some point, the cream will rise to the top and we'll have some good stuff again. But now,
that's true throughout. The music industry is a mess right now. It's a total mess, and there's no real business model existent. And as bad as it is, my understanding is the country genre is doing the best compared to any kind of rock or pop or jazz genres. Or classical. My understanding is the country, like over the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the country genre has done pretty well overall. And modern music has this has a bunch of issues, like the way the stuff is produced or overproduced or cranked out on computer. A lot of the humanity gets lost. A lot of the personal expression, character gets lost and all that. So it's tough, and it's also very difficult. It's hard to present your music these days. Albums no longer exist, and radio doesn't play stuff. So you resort to do the best you can. A lot of folks are resorting to creative YouTube videos, which have sort of replaced radio in many ways, right? Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of OK Go. The band came to prominence not because of their music, but because they're in delightfully insane videos. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a funny business right now. I think country's doing better than anybody.
Yeah, I don't have any idea how they're doing as far as sales. I just know that from my perspective, the quality of what's on the radio, it's all, not so hot. And I'm sure that there is a lot of great stuff being created. It's just that what's on the radio, boy, most of it just sounds the same as the last 5 songs that you heard.
There's also like a genre like alt country, which is like artistically creative country music. I guess Wilco comes into that genre. I don't know. Is that the case?
I don't know. I haven't heard of Wilco.
Okay.
So you're not a big Luke Combs fan then?
Nah. I mean, I couldn't tell you the name of any of his songs. That doesn't mean I wouldn't recognize them. But there just aren't a lot of artists that are getting radio airplay right now that I'd say that I'm a fan of. I like Jason Aldean. Chris Stapleton is really good. It's like Sarah Evans has come out with a new album. I don't know that it's getting any airplay. It's good. Trisha Yearwood, I think, came out with a new album in the last year, but I don't know that it's getting any airplay. So, like I said, I'm sure there's good stuff being made out there. It's just what gets on the airwaves and what doesn't.
Right.
Oh,
I haven't
for all genres, that's been a problem.
Yeah, I haven't listened to the radio in so long. I wouldn't know, except for there's this person I had to cut out of my life. She used to like modern hip stuff, and I was like, you know what, your musical taste is too different from mine. You got to go. You also
I grew up just outside of New York City on Long Island, and way back when, radio served a very different function then. And there were these free-form FM stations where they would get a really interesting DJ and free to play whatever the hell he wants, and it became just entertaining and interesting and a learning experience all at the same time, because they would, I'm specifically referring to WNEW in New York, but it was just delightful to listen to, because you just sit down in a big chair and just listen to FM, and you could hear something you're familiar with that you like. You hear something brand new that you've never heard before. You get to hear talk about why the DJ likes it, or some poetry. It could be anything, and it was just a delight. It was utterly wonderful, and I those days are gone forever. I'm
Not
sure.
Exactly. I can tell you one right here on Ricochet. You go and listen to Jay Norlinger's music podcast.
Right.
That reminds me of the shows when I was growing up. Listen, my father would sit on the back porch, and there'd be this music hour, and he'd just have all sorts of things from opera to rock coming on, and a guy explaining to you. So there's a few people still putting in the effort.
Because when it's done well, it's just nice. If they play something, by some band, I don't know, say the Who, and then they'd throw into something that Pete Townsend was involved in as a session player right after that. So with some interesting link between them, and it gets a learning experience. It was fun, it was quirky, and if anybody can pull it off again, that's great.
Yeah, there's a few people on YouTube doing
stopping you. There's nothing stopping you from doing it, right?
Yeah. There's a few guys on YouTube who are doing stuff like that. You can find people like the History of Rock and all these guys who come out and do those kinds of things that you used to watch on MTV. The MTV presenter, now you're watching it, just a fan of it on TV. And they might sample. And you know what? I did look into it a while ago, because some YouTubers I know were getting cracked down on Twitch because they were just playing whatever they want, and now they were going to get demonetized for it. But it's like the cost to register to play a wide selection of music on just a small creator is like a couple $100 a year. and you get the ability to play these enormous
No, that's good.
You get these enormous things, and they just want it's like a nonprofit that's set up, and you just get lists of the songs you're allowed to play, and it's like huge libraries. That's the word I was looking for, and it costs you a couple $100. And yes, if you scale up, they expect you to pay more.
Mm-hmm. Sounds reasonable. So yeah, I think there's a lot possible. There's certainly a lot possible, and it's great to go back, see how it was done at freeform radio stations back then, and then improve on it, right? Make it even better.
Yep. And we'll get to your last love here right before we get to a few final questions. I understand you really like fast cars.
I do. Yep. I've got my current car. I've got a 2011 Ford Mustang GT that I special ordered because I wanted it exactly how I wanted it, and it's got about 55,000 or 56,000 miles on it, and it's still like a new car almost. So before that, I had a 2000 Corvette and a 91 Toyota MR2 Turbo, and before that, I think it was an 87 Mustang GT. I owned a Ford Taurus SHO from, I don't remember, 90 something. So yeah, I like fast cars.
Do you modify them at all for more power?
Well, with the Mustang, I've changed the springs and the shocks and struts because the ride from the factory was a little softer than I really wanted it. The only modification I made to the engine is put on a Steeda cold air intake and custom tune, which doesn't add a ton of horsepower, but maybe adds 12 or 15 horsepower. It makes it sound a lot meaner though. And short throw shifter just to give the shifter a tighter feel. So no really major performance modifications.
Yeah, I had an 84 Camaro. That's about it for me for fast cars.
Not me.
So I guess if I had, if we weren't trying to save up money to buy a house and we're going to buy a brand new car, I'd probably want to get a Mustang GT again. And I don't know that I'd necessarily modify much on it, but I really like the new Mustangs.
Cool. I'll just have to do the final performative questions. So how did you find Ricochet?
Oh yeah.
A long time ago when I was reading a Jonah Goldberg piece, he'd mentioned that he was a guest on this Ricochet podcast and had a link to it. So I listened to that and really liked it. Was pleasantly surprised to find that James Lilacs was one of the hosts on there. Because being from Fargo, the local newspaper would run some of his columns.
Cool.
So he was already gone from Fargo before I'd ever discovered him. But that's how I'd first come across his name, and then I'd bought a couple of his books. And so that was a really cool surprise to find he was one of the co-hosts. So I'd listen to more and more of those, and eventually I gave in to Rob pleading for cash and signed up, and then read more and more stuff and just became more involved.
Cool. Well, you've been really helpful for us. You've been archiving our pages, getting involved in the group, reminding me to create a group and doing all the stuff here.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could get back that function of the groups that was lost, where you can create an extra page so that we could have a list with all of the links to all of the episodes.
A permanent section.
Yeah. See, like with the Ricochet meetup group, I had that. And so I figured, oh, well, I can do it on your group too. But then it's like something had gone wonky with the software so that I could still keep adding to the pages or adding entries to the extra pages on the Ricochet meetup group, but I couldn't do it on yours. And then Max tried to fix it and the whole thing blew up. So now I don't have those extra pages. Nobody on any group that used to have an extra page has it anymore. Because on the Ricochet meetup, meetup group, I'd had a page of the upcoming meetups, and then a page, well, several pages actually, because I'd have one for each year of past meetups. So if somebody wanted to go back and pull up a post from a meetup that happened a few years ago, they'd be able to find it. And that's all gone now.
That's unfortunate. Well, we'll these things happen. Anyways, and what do you think is the best thing about being on Ricochet?
I'd say the friendships that most of us have made.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've got more friends on Ricochet than I have made in real life.
Mm.
So I've stayed overnight at a couple people's houses. I've had a Ricochet member stay overnight at my house. So yeah, you can make some close friends here.
I guess so.
Well, that's a great thing to kind of end the show on, I think, is talking about the power of friendship and all this stuff. And it's been a great ride. I mean, here we are 30 episodes in. Who thought we'd make it this far? Yeah. And we're going, I've been trying to line up a few more guests, still waiting to hear back from some people. But I know that Arahant has reached out to me and Don about trying to do a joint episode with Mule Skinner, Weasel Wrangler.
Yeah.
And maybe that will be our next episode where we will do a deep dive into the pit.
Oh.
So I want to thank you for coming out, Randy. It's been a great talking to you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay.
And David, keep up a list of the topics we covered here. There's a few of them.
Yeah, there was a few great lists here that we talked about. So I'll be sure to be adding that to the post.
And not one current event.
Right. Well, the current event's too crazy. We're not doing it.
Yeah. If you want to hear about the current event, we did the last episode I did solo with 5 other people on the panel. We few post. Go watch that, and you will know exactly where everything stands, at least of 3 days ago. Okay.
And I guess you're out of current events after that one.
Yeah, like once that's done, we'll be all rested for the next few years. Okay.
We'll be back next time.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with hopefully with the pit show. Okay. Thanks for coming out. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.